That is right, they are releasing a Star Guardian Urgot. I can't believe it, that sounds incredible. There's also a ton of massive changes happening right now on the Rift, so stay tuned to get all of them. And once again, huge shout out to all of you who showed up for the live class yesterday. Here is the highlight from that game.
Happen here, this might be the steal here. There's the Baloney Pony, he's right in there. They're gonna get Mad Munchies. Mad Munchies is down. Captain Mac, he's gonna try to get in there, try to steal it. He R's backwards. He gets it! He steals it! Captain Mac gets the smite steal!
If you guys do want to join in the fun, we will be streaming on our YouTube channel at 10:30 a.m. PST or 4:30 p.m. PST. You can choose one of those 2 times. We'll start with my favorite part, which is going to be the skins. Of course, with the Fiddlesticks visual gameplay update hitting Summoner's Rift this patch, all of his skins are getting a makeover as well. His base skin, as well as his other skins, are receiving some love and getting some of that 2020 magic. We also have some cool new TFT crossover skins with Furyhorn cosplay Veigar and cosplay Tristana. Oh, that's pretty cute. And as a TFT player as well, I'm a huge fan of these guys. Worldbreaker Malzahar, Worldbreaker Maokai, and Worldbreaker Scion are also joining Summoner's Rift, adding more units to that skin line. Finally, the skin we've been waiting for years has finally hit Summoner's Rift, and that is, you guys know it, Pajama Guardian Urgot, which will be joining Summoner's Rift, and the only disappointment is that it's not technically a Star Guardian skin by name. We all know what this really is, but I guess Urgot as a Star Guardian just simply isn't canon. Oh, that's sad. I know that a ton of you guys actually chose Star Guardian Urgot as your date in our question of the day in the last video. That is disgusting, but mad respect. Super excited for that skin, probably gonna buy it if I actually played Urgot. Next up, let's talk about the systems of the game that are receiving changes. There are only 2 hitting Summoner's Rift next patch, and those are a nerf to the Conditioning Rune and a buff to Phase Rush, for melee champions only though. I kinda like this approach that Riot has been taking with making stuff viable for all champions, but a little bit stronger for melee champions. I have no doubt that there's a fine line between giving melee champions more tools to work with, or making them absolutely broken. So far, I've been okay with these changes because they seem pretty fair. Let me know what you guys think down below. Phase Rush is having its movement speed buffed from 30 to 50% to 40 to 60% for melee champions. It's a 10% movement speed buff, which isn't too much, but still pretty significant. In the early game, this will amount to around 30 movement speed for most champions when this rune is active, and closer to 40 more later into the game. Another thing that I like about this is that it kind of changes the dynamic of a Phase Rush versus Phase Rush matchup a little bit. If you're playing a melee champion, one thing that can be difficult to play against is someone who hits you 3 times and then just runs away. Although I don't think it'll be super common, it'll definitely be a possibility to counter champions that use Phase Rush with your own Phase Rush, since melee champions will get a bit more movement speed to work with. This buff also means that you gain 60% movement speed later into the game as a melee champion, which is a lot. Yeah, this just reminds me of like a Trundle running towards me at full speed. It's very terrifying. This should heavily incentivize more melee champions to start using it, and I think this change could stir up the meta. We will keep you guys updated with that, so click that sub button if you want to stay tuned. A less prominent change is the nerf to conditioning. Instead of activating at 10 minutes, it'll be activating at 12 minutes starting next patch. To be honest, I don't think too many people were using it anyways. It was more of a sleeper OP rune that was starting to gain traction. It wasn't as popular as bone plating, but was definitely powerful under certain circumstances. Actually, I take that back. It was pretty strong in almost every situation, since it was guaranteed value past the 10-minute mark. Always pretty good, but not always the best choice. Overall, this nerf is going to hurt quite a bit because this reduces the window of time you'll have those stat bonuses before turret plating falls. Before, you'd have 4 minutes to work with, and now you'll really only have 2 minutes. For players that took this rune for the late game, well, you probably won't even notice these nerfs, but for players that took this for that early mid-game power spike at 10 minutes, you'll need to make some adjustments to your playstyle. Alright guys, let's talk about the changes to the top lane. First up is Nasus, who is set to receive some buffs. He's been underperforming, especially in high elo, so Riot's decided to give him a little bit more power to work with. His W's cast range is being increased from 600 to 700, and his armor shred on his E is also going up from 15 to 35% to 25 to 45%. These are some small buffs, but they should help him out in the early game. However, they are significant buffs in the mid to late game. 10% more armor shred is going to mean a lot more when enemies have more items, and the extra 100 cast range will allow him to have a much easier time slowing the targets he wants to. Nasus could be a very, very strong pick in lower elo. We'll keep you guys updated on that. Next up, let's talk about Riven. She's always a hot topic whenever she receives some balance changes, but as of now, she's going to receive a very minor buff. Her health regen is going up from 7 to 8.5 per 5. While this is a pretty solid buff to her laning, I don't think many players that dislike her hate how much health regen she has. Instead, it's her mobility and damage, and since these things aren't being changed at all, this buff probably won't stir much discussion. However, this will definitely help Riven out a bit during the laning phase, and it'll give her some more health to work with during the early game. Garen has been way too strong in all levels of play. As a result, he's facing the nerf hammer next patch, having his passive cooldown increased from 7 to 8 seconds, and Q's movement speed duration has gone down from 1.5 to 3.5 seconds to 1 to 3.5 seconds. This should weaken his early game a little bit, as this will incentivize players to put an extra point or two into Q to compensate. However, in cases where players instead opt to max E like normal, his damage output will remain unchanged. The increased cooldown on Garen's passive should give his opponents a little bit more time to free farm whenever he needs to back off. Lastly, Wukong is going to be receiving another nerf. Guess that hotfix wasn't enough. Wukong's passive armor per level is going down from 5 to 11 to 5 to 9, and his E's base damage is going down from 80 to 240 to 70 to 210. Wukong has been way too strong this patch, so Riot is planning to take power away from less significant abilities to make sure that the Monkey King still has ways to shine. Overall, he'll be easier to kill in the late game, and his burst damage will go down a little bit. Alright, we're done with the top lane, let's go into the jungle. The big change coming to Summoner's Rift this patch, like we mentioned, is the new Fiddlesticks rework. These numbers are tentative, but we'll give you guys what we have so far. If you guys haven't already, I encourage you guys to check out our video covering the Fiddlesticks rework. We cover it all in depth there, but nonetheless, we'll brush over it briefly here as well. First, Fiddle's base AD is being increased from 48.36 to 55.35. Next, his base armor is going up from 30 to 34, HP per level from 80 to 92, and his base HP from 524.4 to 580.4. These base stat buffs should make Fiddle less of a pile of sticks and something more terrifying. Fiddlesticks' Q will now cost 65 mana and be on a 15 to 13 second cooldown based on skill level. It'll now have a passive that allows him to fear enemies with any spell damage he deals if he's unseen and out of combat. The active portion is that he'll fear his targets if they haven't been recently terrified for 1 to 2 seconds and deal 6 to 10% plus 1% for every 50 AP of their current health. If they've been terrified recently, they aren't feared but instead take double damage. Oi, Fiddlesticks is looking mighty strong. Fiddle's W now drains all targets around him, dealing 50 to 170 plus 35% of his AP damage over 2 seconds, with the final tick dealing up to 12 to 20% of a target's missing health as magic damage. He heals for 30 to 50% of the damage he deals before mitigation, reduced to 15% versus minions. If the channel is completed or nothing is left to harvest, he's refunded 60% of the ability's cooldown. His E will now be a skill shot that reaves an area in front of him. It'll be on a 10 to 6 second cooldown, dealing 70 to 190 damage, and will slow enemies hit for 30 to 50% for 1.25 seconds. Enemies caught in the center will be silenced for the same duration. His ultimate remains unchanged, but do note that his new passive on his Q will add more power to this ability. As we said in our Why New Champions Are Released Strong video, which you can check out here or in our video library, the reason why he is so darn strong is because Riot wants him to be strong in the beginning so that they have some stats to balance him out later on. I think that Fiddle could be OP once he's released, and if history is any lesson, he probably will be overtuned and will probably need a hotfix. Watch that video if you're interested, it's pretty entertaining. Next up, let's talk about a more friendly jungler, Ivern. his E's damage is going up from 60 to 140 to 70 to 170, and his ultimate's cooldown is being reduced from 160 to 120 to 140 to 120. Overall, these buffs should help out Ivern's mid-game, as he'll have access to Daisy more often and also deal some more damage. Ivern really needs buffs, guys. Just go on some forums and just shout at Riot to give him some buffs, because he is just not being played. Hopefully he gets what he needs. Xin Zhao is also receiving buffs. His passive heal is going up from 10 to 68 to 10 to 112. This will make him a lot tankier in the late game as long as he's able to auto-attack enemies constantly. His win rates have been on the lower end recently, so this buff should help him out quite a bit without making him any more oppressive in the very early game. Alright guys, that's it for the jungle. Let's head into the mid lane. Corki's been needing some love for a while now. My first main, how the mighty have fallen. He's flown off and disappeared from Summoner's Rift, but his package's DOT duration on direct hits is going up from 1.5 to 2 seconds. Some more power on his passive may incentivize players to play him more, but it's a very minor buff overall. This probably won't change him too much. Oh, poor Corki. Next up we have Talon, who is receiving a nerf. He's been too strong in elite levels of play, and thus his wave clear specifically is going to take a hit. I know that this was just way too much. He would just clear the wave, get lane priority, and then just use his insane mobility to influence other lanes and get that W. Speaking of W, Talon's W is having its initial damage reduced from 50 to 110 plus 40% bonus AD to 45 to 105 plus 45% bonus AD. And its return damage reduced from 70 to 130 plus 60% bonus AD to 45 to 125 plus 65% bonus AD. His late game power will remain unchanged, but these nerfs should make it harder for Talon to clear waves. Surprisingly, Nocturne is showing up in our mid lane section because this nerf that he's receiving is targeted at Nocturne mid. His HP regen is going down from 8.5 to 7 per 5 seconds, and MR per level from 1.25 to 0.75. This should take some power away from Nocturne mid, especially against AP champions, but he'll still be a viable pick for sure. In contrast, Akali is receiving a minor buff. Oof, we know what happens when Akali receives either a buff or a nerf. Her E will now deal magic damage instead of physical damage. In extremely rare cases, this might be a nerf, but about 95% of the time, this will actually be a buff, as her E will now benefit from items like Morellonomicon, Oblivion Orb, and Void Staff. Finally, Galio is receiving another buff in the mid lane as well. His ultimate will now grant allies caught in his ultimate a % of Galio's maximum HP as a magic shield. This buff is huge, and will also allow Galio to fit the niche of a protector much more appropriately. Alright, that's it for the mid lane, guys. Now let's run it down to the bot lane changes, or just one change rather. Kai'Sa is the only bot laner receiving a balance change next patch. Her E's cooldown is receiving a buff going down from 16 to 14 to 16 to 12. Overall, she hasn't been performing at the level Riot wants her to, so she's getting some more juice. She's still seeing a ton of play, so I expect that her statistics will continue to climb, especially with the addition of this buff. And oddly enough, there aren't any changes to supports noted as of now, but we will keep you updated if that changes. That's it for the upcoming changes video for patch 10.7. If you guys enjoyed this video, then please leave us a like and consider subscribing to the channel. Once again, we are filming from my apartment instead of the studio because of coronavirus. I know a lot of you guys are affected. I hope that everyone is staying safe and that all of you guys are healthy and just enjoying this time to relax and play some League of Legends. Once again, if you guys want to get better at League of Legends, you can go on Pro Guides and find a pro coach, or you can tune in every day on our stream and go hang out with Zyrene. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. Once again, it's been Christoph. Good luck your next few games, and I'll see you on the Rift.